Hello and welcome back to But Wait, There's More. I'm Dez Hickson. Yes, as you can see on the scroll, it's my birthday yesterday, but I got the whole month of October, so
Happy
we're
birthday,
celebrating.
Des. No, that's good,
Thanks,
dude.
Joy. Introduce
It's
yourself, Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy, and I'm just gonna say happy birthday to Des again because I do birthday months, so you get to celebrate the whole month. So you
Well,
got a couple days left. You got a bunch of days left, actually.
I got a bunch of days left, but I'm straight. I'm all out of wine. I drank all my birthday
Oh,
wine last night, so yeah, I don't have that.
that's a
Um,
good thing. Well,
It
thanks
was
for.
good. Chocolate wine, Chocovino. I definitely recommend it.
I haven't had
But
that. Chocolate
oh
wine
goodness
sounds
gracious! And I actually woke up without the hangover.
That is good. I see. I used to get hangovers from wine when I was younger, but I feel like I've kind of grown out of it a little bit. So
Yeah, because you know how to play better. Like when you're a kid, you're like, I'm just gonna keep chugging them back because they're
not
good.
quite a kid. Let's not say a kid.
Well, you know what I mean. When you're
Yeah,
younger, right?
I do.
But as you
I
get
do.
older, you're like, okay, hydrate,
Yeah,
eat
exactly.
a somewhat of a balanced meal, plenty of protein, and then you can get drunk. And then
Instead
you
of
don't wake up with that smashing headache. And
right. I feel like Advil was a thing that would always
yes,
that Advil right before you go to sleep.
that's right.
Oh my gosh,
Advil or
enough of
Tylenol, right?
the debauchery. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about. I guess this
Yeah,
whole
we are going to be
episode
talking about some debauchery today, aren't we?
is debauchery. We got here pictured Sante, Himes, and
Kenneth
Kenny
Kimes
Kimes
Jr.
Jr. Who we're going to be talking about today. You know, I always think of scammers as, not what so I'll say what's different about this case, from the last one that we talked about. Who we got with Crazy
Mm-hmm.
Sherry Papini.
Papini.
I'm gonna find something that is a S word. Sassy. I don't know. Sassy's too nice. But
Yeah,
anyhow,
I
Sherry
was like, that's
Papini,
a
where she,
positive phrase.
she was just scamming. She was just a fraudster. And I
Yeah,
say just meaning she didn't even have bodies on her.
right.
So that's what's different about this one. I think crosses into a whole nother level is, you know, I get, there are people in the world who they want to be rich, they want to be famous, but you kind of, I stopped the understanding when you go as so far as to murder, which is what happened in the case of these two.
Yeah, I mean,
Sante and Kenny.
they had a good scheme going. This one's been running the schemes for decades, since she was a youngster. And apparently it was something that she was raised to do, right? But she
Right.
was also apparently spoiled rotten, so she didn't understand what the word no meant.
Right.
Um,
And that's kind of one of the other things that stood out in this case. Like you said, she grew up, with expectations that she should have everything in life. Um, you know, Sante's American citizen, born in Oklahoma City. I believe it's 1934 is what I have. That's the Great Depression, right?
yeah,
We're
that's about that time.
coming out of
That's
it.
right.
I hadn't thought
Yeah,
about that till I said it out loud. So, you know, I'm not going to give her any leeway, but in that time, she was born into, especially in Oklahoma City, Dust Bowl,
hmm,
plains. There's nothing. Born into a time of need. But for what I understand about reading about her background is that she came sort of from a family of scammers or a
yeah,
family of people who didn't exactly abide by the law to obtain what they wanted. And I believe that was her birth family. She was adopted, or she did grow up with a different family. And her adopted family spoiled her. And, a lot of the testimony I've read said that it's possible that contributed to her what I would call narcissism, or her
mm-hmm.
need to want everything and to be the center of attention, or to have this wealth and this glamour and these material possessions. Was maybe it was that growing up being born into the Depression, and then sort of being a part of a family or coming from a family that didn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but con people into getting what they want. But yeah,
Right.
that's my understanding too.
And I mean, and you think about it, on one hand, you can't really blame people, you know, when back then, people had large families. So you had to do whatever it took to feed them. And we didn't have welfare as we know it. We didn't have these systems where you could just go to an office and go, hey, I need food for my kids. There was a lot of, it was a lot more restrictive back then. And there was a lot of shame that was placed upon it until, you know, the what do you call, the New Deal and all the other programs that came out of it. People still, you know, they did what they had to do. And so Sante came from that tradition. But when you add the tradition of getting whatever you need to get, and then the tradition of don't take no for an answer, then you get a woman who does whatever it takes to get what she wants, period.
Right. And I'll definitely buy that it's a time where the social welfare programs aren't necessarily as available, if available at all. But at the same time, when has scamming people ever been okay? It's like I feel like
never been okay.
I would feel like back then it's even like more despicable because like nobody has anything. Like you're not the only one with nothing. Like literally the bread lines are blocks long. You know, everybody's trying to find work, and you're somehow finding your work you know, through scamming people.
Yeah, it's really hard sometimes when you watch certain things. It really depends, right? Because prior to the Dust Bowl era, we had Jesse James, and we had, you know, the bank robber types, John Dillinger, and all these people, and they became folk heroes, right? So in a way, they were con artists that became heroes because they were stealing from the rich.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like supposedly
they weren't necessarily given to the poor, though. They were just stealing.
Right? Not quite Robin Hood, I would say.
And so I imagine that even in that time, particularly during Sante's time, there might have been some of that going on. So people would maybe look the other way. As long as you weren't stealing from the little guy down the street, you were just stealing from the rich folks on the hill. Hey, none of my business what you do, right? As long as you pay me.
True. And you're right. And so, you know, we talked about Sante's, you know, kind of upbringing, grew up, you know, born in the 30s. Obviously, what follows that is World War II. But you know, as a teen, she marries. I believe she quickly gets divorced. Maybe I'm confusing that with something else I read earlier. But I know that she eventually settles with her husband, who she has her first child with, Kent Walker, and you know, she marries him, you know, has her first son, and you know, I feel like that is really when the pronounced crime that she perpetuates, the pronounced scamming that she perpetuates, sort of starts. You know, one of the things I read that she was also known as the Dragon Lady, because even, you know, in this first marriage, you know, she's on the West Coast, Nevada, in Hawaii. She
had exotic good looks, right? Because her father was East Indian.
Yeah, that
and her mother
to Elizabeth Taylor. I don't see it. I didn't see it, but
I don't see it either. Let me post up a picture.
But I could see how she could get there. I did. Yeah, right. I can. Right. Definitely, I can see the resemblance to Elizabeth Taylor. And you know, man, I could see it.
Yeah.
But during this time,
if you feed them enough booze, they'll believe anything they see.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
Exactly. During this time, she's moving from house to house, and not just moving from house to house, but Sante figures out that if she lives in these homes and she gets homeowners insurance, that oftentimes the homeowners insurance, or the insurance that she can get from a burned down or destroyed home, is more than the value of the home or the mortgage of the home. So she develops this pattern, which is why she gets the name the Dragon Lady,
right,
of setting
just
fire,
lighting everything up.
Yes, she sets fire to her homes to collect the insurance from, and she does this who knows how many times, half a dozen times,
right,
in her early adulthood. Not only that, but one of the things that her eldest son Kent says in his adulthood that he can remember as a young child, from the time he can walk up until he kind of knows better, is that Sante would take him to department stores. In this picture, she's not wearing any jewelry, but she loved that glamour. She liked the Elizabeth Taylor aesthetic. Elizabeth Taylor was known for her diamonds, and so she would take Kent to these stores, and instead of her, necessarily, yeah, wow, that really is the Elizabeth Taylor look right there. Instead of her, going in and stealing these jewels or stealing, fancy coats, she would get Kent to do it, and he said, at the time, he's an old man. He says, looking back, I'm upset that she was able to manipulate me to do these things, but he was a child. I get that feeling of not wanting to be manipulated even by your own mother. But yeah, it's a freaking shame that she was making her 5, 6, 7-year-old go into department stores to help her steal. But this is what she was doing. So she was collecting money from setting her own residences on fire. And she was going to these various department stores and satisfying sort of her narcissistic need to have, fancy jewels and fancy clothes that she couldn't afford. Her husband at the time, Kent Walker, was a working man, committed to her, but she wanted more. And from what I know, they eventually divorced because not only was she, setting fire to their homes and stealing and getting caught for it.
Setting fire to your home could put a damper for in any marriage.
Yeah, but she was, also committing adultery. So he was done with it, and they eventually divorced. But between this time of them getting married and her having their first child, she's convicted of various petty crimes such as the shoplifting. I remember listening to one video of Kent talking, and he says, one time me and my mom were at a department store, and she had stuffed what I believe was like a small coat into her bag, and they walk out of the store as if nothing was any different. And as they're walking out, the department store officials say, "Hey, we know you're shoplifting," and call the police and try to detain her. Well, Kent says that when that happened, all he remembers is during that instance, his mom, Sante, cocking back her fist and punching him as hard as she could in his lip. And he says to this day, he still has a scar on his lip.
Oh my God.
She split his lip, blood's gushing everywhere. Minutes pass by, the police get there, and Sante points to the department store, lady, and says, "Hey, she hit my son." And the department store lady ends up getting arrested for hitting Kent, even though Sante had done that, and Sante gets off scot-free.
Yep, distraction.
From her fraud and like debauchery and scheming had like no limits.
Oh yeah, she was the queen of such things. I mean, the thing that tripped me out was reading about how she would help people in the community, like poor people, homeless people. Hey, I can give you a home. You can hang out in my basement. And then she'd turn them into virtual slaves.
Oh yeah.
By threatening to, like, if they were immigrants or whatever, I'll have you deported if you report me. I mean, this woman was, I mean, Sherry Papini, please.
Sherry Papini was child's play.
Child's play.
I mean, I remember hearing that too. Was okay. So when she gets with her second husband, and that's one of the things I'll point out too about Sante is that I never learned this. Kent, again, her first kid, says that this is something that Sante told him was marry rich because it's easier. Like don't even waste your time going to college, getting a job, learning a trade, developing skills. Just marry rich, and that really solves all your problems. So she does. Yes. She marries rich, marries her second husband, Kenneth
Kimes the first.
Kenneth Kimes Senior, who is a hotelier, has a couple motels across the United States. I think Kent said at the time that his mom met Kenny. Their names are very similar. At the time his mom met Kenny, Kenny was worth $22 million. And this was back in like 1969. So, I mean, I would almost assume that's like $75 to $100 million, maybe $50 to $100 million these days. So quite a good bit of money.
Right.
So, her and Kenny get together. They date for many years. They eventually get married down the line. But like you said, during her relationship with Kenny Kimes, she does this thing where they're living in Nevada, Los Angeles, close to, the border. This is a time where the border is not necessarily closed. So one of the things Sante starts doing is like trafficking Mexican women over to work for her. And I mean, you could almost call it a modern form. I would even call it indentured servitude because did Sante ever have any intention of letting them free?
Probably not.
I don't know, because eventually she's charged with like 5 counts of slavery.
That's right. Is it because one of them got away or something?
Yeah, one of them got away, said, hey, she's holding us against our will. We came across the border. We thought we were, coming to work and, work jobs and be paid. I mean, even if you come across the border undocumented, that don't mean you get that doesn't make you a slave. Like,
no, exactly.
So this is the crazy part to me. So you're with a man who at the time we can estimate is worth $22 million, and you still decide that you want to hold, women who are destitute, looking for a way out, looking for a better life as slaves. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know, like, slavery. Yes, I know slavery is illegal, but I didn't know there was an actual crime in the 70s, 80s of like slavery. Like, I didn't know that was something you could be charged with as slavery.
Right. Because that seems so antiquated.
It seems very antiquated. So yeah, she is, I'm trying to find the year she was actually convicted, but she's charged with like 5 counts of slavery. Her live-in husband, fiance, boyfriend, Kenneth, is also charged. Kenneth ends up getting like 3 years suspended prison sentence and a fine, and then Sante ends up being convicted and gets sentenced to 5 years. She serves 3. Now, before she's sentenced, she has her second kid, who is Kenny Kimes Jr., who she ends up committing all these later crimes with. And I remember Kent saying during this documentary that I was watching about all this, that when Sante was in prison, they all had a pretty normal life. Like kids
Right.
and
That's when that's the only time in these guys' life that they had a normal life. It wasn't full of lies, it wasn't full of deceptions, it wasn't full of criming. It
right. It
was
wasn't
they went
crimey.
to school, they did what kids do. It was completely normal. They could breathe, they weren't afraid,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah, that documentary kind of broke my heart watching that, because I'm just kind of like, wow, they had peace, and then what happened next?
Ooh, that cold water was good.
No
But
doubt.
no, so yeah, she, like I was saying, she ends up getting convicted of 5, but only serves 3, and gets out. And I believe like Kenny and Kent's almost a grown man. Kenny's a young teen at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But gets out, and like the manipulation like immediately starts. The forgery starts back up. I'm looking at her like her list of things.
Well, keep in mind, she wasn't criming by herself at this point either. She was
Say more.
criming with her husband.
Yes, criming.
Her husband was already rich and everything
Right.
when they met, but they came up with a scheme to become richer.
Mm-hmm.
The coin scheme, or the flag scheme. They were supposed to mint. They were selling these flag posters. It was supposed to be the 200th anniversary of the United States, and so I can't remember who was president at the time. I feel like it was Reagan, but they were trying to
Jimmy. Yeah,
Jimmy Carter or Reagan.
Yeah.
But they were going around, and he was trying to up his street cred as a patriot, as a local patriot, not a politician, but somebody who could be trusted. And
we got a lot of those these days.
Don't we though, right? Yeah, but this is before you start thinking about PACs or PACs the way we know them now. So he's just going out trying to up his credibility and saying, "Hey, we've designed this bicentennial flag," and the scheme was they were going to try and get the United States to purchase these and then sell them through the post office, and then they'd get their cut, and they'd be selling them to schools and stuff at $10 a piece, at, I think it was like 247,000 parcels or something. That's a lot of money. Yeah. They were hoping to get very rich, but it was a con. They didn't really have this together. It was just something they were selling to people.
So they were selling
to try and get investors.
Mm-hmm. Jeez Louise. And I think a part of that was because they lived well beyond their means. So, this scheme, by the time Kenny Sr. ends up dying, as I said, Sante Kimes gets into this marriage because she wants to marry rich. This is really her path to freedom, to a life of wealth and being able to live in the laps of luxury as a retired widow. And so eventually Kenneth Sr. dies and there's like no money left. Not to mention he has like a previous marriage and previous kids.
That's right.
From an earlier marriage. But there's no money left at once he dies and passes away. Not to mention that when he does pass away, Sante keeps his death like a secret from all his kids for months.
I find that piece incredible. Like the first piece I find incredible is they were broke. Okay, when she met the man, he had money. Now they don't have anything. And then to not tell anybody he's dead, so you can try and sell, because she was trying to sell his property, wasn't she?
Trying to
get the proceeds for herself.
Using his credit cards, signing wire transfers under his name, and one of the things, like you said, I found remarkable was he died in like March. I think it was the mid 80s, maybe like 85. Dies in the March mid 80s, Sante doesn't even tell Kenny Jr. that he died until like the summer, so June, July. So
Wow.
gets him cremated, scatters his ashes. No one is at the funeral, obviously,
Right, because they
and
don't know.
you don't tell your own son that his dad died because you want to keep scheming. Not to spare his feelings. Let's not be too optimistic here or
Right.
too
It
reverent,
was so she could keep scheming, and that's
because she can
your
keep
own
scheming in
child.
peace, really. Forget a will, forget a last testimony. And so she can keep scheming, which really brings us to the first murder. Um,
Who
the
was that?
first murder, which I think kind of sets this apart from our everyday scammer, our everyday, person who maybe writes a bad check, or, again, the Sherry Papini who kidnaps herself. But our first victim, Syed Bilal Ahmad, who is a banker, I believe out of the Bahamas. At least that's where
Yeah.
Sante and Kenny eventually meet him. So you guys got to bear with me. We're recovering from the flu. It's going around flu season. So as I mentioned, Sante's like writing all these wire transfers, and Syed's like, this is kind of unusual for Kenneth Senior. These wire transfers are too frequent. What's going on here? So he gets suspicious. Sante and Kenny Jr. fly down to the Bahamas to be like, hey, this is legit. They lure, or I won't say lure, they invite Syed to dinner. Syed, accepts the invitation and goes out to dinner with them, and that's kind of where the crazy mayhem starts, and where I think Kenny Jr. is first convinced to really do dirt for his mom, and that's something we haven't touched on yet. That or not touched on deeply, is that Sante is a mom who is getting her kids to commit these crimes for her. So first with Kent, who she gets to steal, and now with Kenny, who she gets to fly down to the Bahamas with her, because they want to kill Syed. So they get him to come out to dinner. At the dinner, Kenny drugs him, from what they call I'm not sure what they use, but the typical date sexual
like
assault,
Rohypnol or something like that.
Yeah. What'd you call it? Say it again.
Rohypnol used to be a
Rohypnol.
date rape drug, but if you give somebody too much, it will kill them.
Yeah, right. So they give that to him, and exactly what you said happens. He ends up either being killed from it, or gets killed by Kenny, and they dispose of his body. Well, now we're good to go. The person who
we don't have the banker that's going to rot us out.
Right. The banker's gone now. This first, we got him out of here. We got him out the paint. He's gone. And so that really, and we talked about whether we would call Sante and Kenny serial killers, but this really is what starts their series of murders. They kill Syed, and they're out of there. The next place that they end up is back on the West Coast. So they kill him. Everything's free and clear. We got no more suspicion. And I don't know if they ever really, at the time, Syed gets killed in September 96. I'm not sure if they even, at the time, considered that. I don't think I'll take that back. Syed did tell some of his coworkers that he was going to dinner with Sante and Kenneth. But definitely at the time, it was not apparent that they were, explicitly,
we call the assailants, the people that did anything.
It wasn't.
Nobody suspected them.
Right. So they pretty much get off. they could get off. They get off. They get to fly back to the United States, keep living their life, and they go on to the next thing. Which ends up being the next victim, March 1998. David Kasdan. I don't know if we have a picture. There's a lot of David.
We don't have a picture of him, unfortunately.
Not yet.
I looked and looked.
But David Kasdan was actually a family friend. So Syed, a banker, not really know him. You know, there's somebody
right.
That works for
no
him.
Attachment to him,
no
really.
Attachment. But David Kasdan is a family friend. David Kasdan had actually assumed a mortgage or assumed the title on one of the homes of Sante and Kenneth Sr. when Kenneth was still alive. He had assumed that title because, like you said, they were being investigated for like fraud and scheming, and they didn't want that home to be repossessed or possessed or taken under them. So they put it in David's name, and unbeknownst to David, while it is in his name, Sante takes out like a mortgage on it. She takes out she either refinances, takes out another mortgage for like $285,000, which is a lot of money in the 90s. You know, that's probably be close to $750,000 now. So she takes out another mortgage in his name, and David only finds out that they took out this second mortgage because the mortgage payments start to arrive.
Right.
Yeah. But lo and behold,
coupon in the mail.
But lo and behold, Sante also decides that this is a house she wants to burn down. But wait a minute. There's so many twists and turns. But wait a minute. The insurance investigators at this point have caught on, and they know this is arson, and so they refuse to pay. So now we have a burned down house that is under the name of David Kasdan, a family friend, that has a mortgage on it. So basically, he's assumed the mortgage for a burned down lot, really. A burned down house that's really a lot. And so yeah, he's pissed. He's upset. He's upset, saying like, "Hey,
wouldn't you be if somebody burned down your house? Your name's attached to it. The insurance company, is looking at you now, and you're like, hey, I'm minding my own business over here. What's up?"
Yep. So, you know, Sante and Kenneth Jr. They saw the plan work on Syed, and so what they do is they decide to kill David.
You know what? First time lucky, second time's a charm.
Yeah, they say, you know what? We got to get rid of this guy. He's gonna.
He's bringing too much attention to us.
You're right, and I wouldn't even say they decided. I use the term "we" and "they" loosely. I think it was Sante. Again.
Right, only one person was a mastermind here. I really believe that, and that was Sante, and she was leading Kenny around by the nose. So, and in fact, she commanded him. Yeah, she commanded him to kill David.
Yeah, so they killed David, and again, hey, got him out of the way. We're still free. We can keep scheming. I mean, I don't know if there was anything really to get out of that situation other than their freedom. House is burned down. It's got a mortgage on it. There's nothing really to get out of that. So they end up in New York. Of course, you can't stay in two places too long. So they've killed in the Bahamas. They've killed in Nevada, I believe this is in. It's either Nevada or Los Angeles. I believe the house is in Nevada. I mean, they might have killed them in Los Angeles, but they had been in Nevada. And so they go then to New York, where they meet their third victim, Irene Silverman. Now, as we know, Sante likes to do it big. She don't do anything little. So she does her researches and she finds out that Irene Silverman is what many describe as an eccentric heiress, millionaire, who has what was at the time a $7.7 million apartment building, I would say, in New York. So imagine it's not just like, one level of a building. It's the entire, like, couple floors, and, worth $7.7 million. And what Irene does, because she's a single lady, she rents out rooms to various people. And Sante and Kenneth realize this, Kenny Jr. realize this, and they say, hey, this is our mark. This is who we need to go after. We can either scheme or trick this old lady into signing us over the deed. Like, we can get her property from under her. And so that's what they start to do. They start to scheme to try to do that. Kenneth goes in under a false name, rents a room to avoid any sort of scrutiny or suspicion. He basically puts up $6,000 cash and says, hey, don't worry about the background check. We're good. Look, I got $6,000. Like,
here's my money.
I got it. Like, you don't got to do a background check on us. And, he has a false name anyway. So him and Sante get a room. And one of the things that Irene would say about Kenneth and Sante as they had their room was they acted very suspicious. Like, they would avoid the cameras around the neighborhood. They would avoid the cameras in the building. They never wanted the housekeeping to come into their room to clean. They weren't really social with the other boarders.
Yeah, that's the one thing I noticed from the documentary. Irene was a very lively, vivacious person, and so she often tried to get the tenants in her building to get together and do things. But the Kimeses were like, no, thank you. We don't want to participate.
Yeah.
But
so
what happens to her?
Sante puts her forgery skills to the test, or I wouldn't even say to the test. She puts her forgery skills to use, and finds a copy of the deed. I think that stuff is kind of like available. You go search public records, and you can probably get a copy of the deed, especially back then. Finds the deed, practices Irene's signature, forges it, and basically forges a copy of the deed that says that it's been handed over to Sante and Kenneth. Well, okay, now we got the paperwork. Let's get rid of Irene. So according to testimony, court records, Kenneth or Sante, they get Irene, they lure her to the door of their room, they stun her with a stun gun, knock her out, and Irene is never heard from again.
Yeah, to this day, they've never found her body.
They never found her. Never found her to this day. And like I said, that's the last anybody hears of Irene. Well, of course, like you said, Irene is very social, outgoing. People start looking for her. And, once they start looking for her, they're like, hey, we got these new weirdos, investigate them. And sort of when they start investigating, they find the forged deed. They find Sante with like 7 passports with different names. They find all these credit cards and just all these forged documents and papers and evidence of crime. And they're like, okay, we got our person. This is who did it, basically. And that is really when everything starts to unravel, and they're caught. So at that point, it's a wrap. And Sante and Kenneth end up going on trial. So they killed their first victim in September 96. They killed.
Well, they were able to nail them for her because they were in her car, right? Was it her car? They were in the car had all the paperwork, all the evidence.
Right, yes. All the
paperwork. So, like, they don't have a body, but they've got plenty of evidence that they were ripping this old lady off.
They were showering in the paperwork. Now, look, as a former police officer, I'm just like, no body, no crime. But
right,
but they did. We know today that Kenneth and Sante did do it because Kenneth ends up confessing. Like, eventually, they go to court. They're up for the death penalty. Kenneth wants to spare his mother the death penalty, so he confesses to these crimes. So that's really how everything comes out. Kenneth,
right?
Ever the doting son, wants to spare his mom the death penalty, and he basically confesses to everything. And I don't think Sante ever confessed. I don't think Sante ever pled guilty or said, yes, I did this. She always maintained her innocence, and she basically says that Kenny Jr. confessed because he wanted to spare me the death penalty. Like, we didn't do this. He pled guilty because, like we know, sometimes if you plead guilty, the judge will spare you the death penalty, or the prosecutor will say, okay, if you plead guilty or if you confess to everything, then we won't seek the death penalty.
Right, so, and we know that does happen in a lot of cases, to save the victims, to save the county or whatever. Just confess, and then we'll shorten the time it takes to go to court, or we'll lessen your charges so that you don't serve the death penalty. You'll just be life in prison or whatever.
Yes.
But this woman was conning all the way to the jailhouse.
I mean, from birth to death, basically. She ends up dying. Well, so she's convicted. Go ahead.
She was the judge had to put a gag order on her.
Yes, yeah,
because
right.
She was trying to manipulate reporters and go on TV and say, "Oh, I didn't do." She was trying to manipulate the jury before they ever got to.
I watched the 60 Minutes interview with those two.
Mm-hmm.
They almost got me. I started to believe they didn't do it, just because during the interview, you can kind of like, I'll try to do my hand, like she has his hand, holding his hand. She's holding her son's hand, kind of like this the whole interview. And they're charismatic. There they are. Sante and Kenny Jr. They're charismatic. They're warm. They smile. They're
you wouldn't believe that these two people right here are con artists and murderers.
No, I believe anybody else before these two. Anybody else. Especially because at this point, Sante isn't that Elizabeth Taylor sort of Cleopatra.
She's an old lady. She looks like an old lady.
She looks like an old lady. And I mean, if I'm looking at this here, Kenny Jr., he kind of looks like JFK Jr. He looks like JFK Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, that JFK Jr. might have still been alive, might have just died.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, no, this is America. This is America's mother-in-law and son.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know they did it, but I'm saying the interview, just how they come across. I get what you're saying now, where they had to be put under a gag order, kept from talking to people. She'd probably be able to talk me out of my underwear. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
talk the shirt off.
I swear, I'm just
give
gonna
her
borrow him.
I
don't need the DNA or anything. I'm just gonna hold on to these for you.
Yeah, I probably put some on her books. Not because I like her, but because she probably could have talked me into it. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm saying that these people were that convincing to me, just like. And then that's the basic gist of Sante, but there are a lot of unusual things in this case. And before we get to like the unusual stuff, one of the things that I wrote this quote from the 60 Minutes interview that Sante said. She said, I learned from her business, from her hotelier husband. She said, I learned from my husband to be smart with business because people will try to cheat you.
Con artists are probably some of the sharpest business people you'd ever want to meet, right? Because they know every angle. They know every angle that somebody might use to rip them off.
It's crazy. It's crazy, one, that she would say that.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy too because obviously she's the cheater. Like it's like,
right.
Like come on. It's that she would say it like knowing that she's the look.
Right, like it's an everyday. Like, doesn't everybody know that you need to be smart at business so you don't get ripped off?
You have to be smart in business because people might try to cheat you. Lordy, but okay. So some of the unusual things about this that I don't think, like, when I try to like recall other true crime stuff, is like the fact that this is like a mother-son duo.
Yes, it's unique.
Not only scamming, but they are killing people too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the scamming is definitely more common, or I see, especially with women, like women using their kids to scam, or not even to scam, but to get an advantage, whether that is because out of necessity, like
right. But usually though, when you think about a mother and son duo kind of thing, you're not thinking of an old lady and her middle-aged son.
No,
you're thinking a young mother who's trying to put food on the table, and she goes and she needs diapers, so she sends 3-year-old Timmy into the bodega and goes with the sniffles and going, my mommy needs help with diapers. And oh, by the way, can we have some milk too?
Or the kids going around picking pockets, something like that.
Yes, but not this.
No. The other thing that
picture up.
Yeah, the other thing that is he's still in jail. That's right. The one thing I want to point out was that they were convicted in like the early 2000s, and Sante died in 2014 in jail in New York, and Kenny Jr. is still serving his sentence.
Yeah, within 74 years or something like that.
Crazy. Yeah, they got like multiple life terms.
Yep, never getting out.
So yeah, that's crazy. He gave his whole life to his mom, but you know what? I won't even say he gave. She took it from him.
She took his life.
Because you know what? As old as he is, and I remember, like, I'm thinking about another, and I couldn't tell you any of the names, but I was doing some research, and I remember this case with a father who had been missing out of his kid's life for forever, and now kid's a 20-30 something year old, and the kid is working at a bank. And the father comes back into the kid's life and says, hey, I just need some money. And so the kid's like, okay, I've known my father to be a scammer. I've known him to be a cheat. I've known him to be a bank robber. Let's rob my bank that I work at. And the son is so, willing to kind of sort of accommodate his father and be there for his dad that he turns a blind eye while his father is robbing the bank. And, they both end up going down for it. But I almost expect that more than, again, this mother-son duo. And then the other part about that is it wasn't just like one time big scheme. They went from scamming, as Kenneth was growing up and his mom and dad were still alive, to killing a man in the Bahamas, to killing a man in Nevada.
Right, they traveled. They left the country for a hot minute.
I call it traversing the Americas. That's what they did. I'm just thinking about other duos like Bonnie and Clyde.
I mean,
that's husband and wife, girl and boyfriend, girlfriend and boyfriend. But a mother-son.
Yeah, you don't hear a whole lot, at least not in the murder gig.
Mother-son. And then I didn't find this funny, but I did see a clip. Again, this was maybe during the 60 Minutes interview, that outside of his mom's influence, and I don't want to harp too much on this because I don't want to completely absolve Kenneth of responsibility, because he is a grown man, at this, when he's doing these killings, he is grown.
Right. He should know better.
Of his mom's influence, he seemed to be pretty normal. He even had, you remember Singled Out on MTV, the dating show?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had an appearance on Singled Out. They had clips of him where he was like a young adult man, again, striking looking, looks like a young JFK Jr. He's on Singled Out. Like how I mean, yes, it takes all kinds, anybody can
right.
But he seemed to want to live a normal life outside of his mom's influence. But I also wonder if when she was in prison, if that created sort of like an attachment disorder, or if there was like an attachment.
I would bet that there was. I know one of the things the documentary covered, or at least one of the documentaries covered, was the fact that, like as a kid, he got to ride in limousines. She would pay for him to have friends.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she would. Wow. Because he, like his mother, he usually had told tall tales.
Yeah.
Our family's in the mafia. We do.
I couldn't stand kids like that in school.
Right, and so he probably had a difficult time making real good friends, right? Yeah. And so mom hires a babysitter / friend for him, and they had to jump when mom says jump. She would make promises. Oh, I'm going to send you guys to Russia to go to school. I'm going to send you. So she made promises to him about the way his life would be. But he was mostly, stuck local wherever his mom was going. And if she had a grift and she had to go away to do that grift, he followed her. But it sounds like, when she went to jail, he was free. But a woman like that probably spends her time trying to, what's the word? Not just manipulating, but she's only going to mess with you if she can gain something from you. And if there was ever a point in time that he was a kid and he said, no, mom, I love you, but I can't help you. I don't like stealing. I don't like this or that or the other. Then all of a sudden she don't have time for the kid. Well, the kid is going to he's going to choose to do the crimes with her so that he stays in her good graces, so that she still loves him. And that's the saddest piece. The documentary kept showing time and time again how sometimes he would feel like he was going to stand up for himself, and then she would push back against that, and then he would go, fine, I give up because I want my mother's love more than I want my independence. And he let himself be misled. And so I definitely he deserves to be in prison because he was a grown man at the time that these crimes happened. He should have had some sort of strength, if not to stop himself from doing the crimes, but to stop her. He was a young man, or to confess before things went too far. Like when they killed the Bahamian banker, he could have in fact, that's one of the reasons why he was charged, right? They said, listen, you're culpable because not just because you did what she said, but because you had the opportunity to pick up the telephone and go, boop, 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 boop. I know about a murder, and you never said anything. So,
you think you turn your mom in, Dez?
Yeah, I would.
Oh, you would, yeah. I want you to put me on the spot because I don't know. Yeah, I think,
you know what? Only because I was raised by a mom that was very not quite like Sante.
Oh, okay.
But I had a complicated relationship with my mother, we'll say. And I did spend a lot of my years trying to vie for her attention and vie for her love. But on the other hand, it was like, as I got older, I was like, that's crazy. I don't know if I would have done what Kenny did, but I probably did a few things that were like inappropriate because my mother asked me to.
Yeah.
I can tell you stories, but I will not share them on YouTube. But so
I imagine that is the case. I mean, that's almost more understandable than not doing what your mom says.
Exactly, like, because they're your parent, they're your elder.
Yeah, you upside the head for not doing something. Yeah, like
exactly. You don't want the disappointment. Oh, I'm writing you out of the will. As far as he knew at this time, at least at some point in time, there was still money to go around. Hey, at least if I hang on till she's dead, this is just my opinion, but maybe he's thinking if I hold on till she's dead, there'll be some money coming my way, and then I won't have to grift anymore. So I'll just hang out a little bit. But who knows? Money, regardless of like family lineage and whatever, money makes people do some really wild and crazy things. It really does. And the love of money, right, is the thing that kind of makes people even more crazy.
That's I mean, it's not news to me, but like you said, there's different people in the world because like I said, between go back Sherry Papini, Taylor Swindler.
Like, we got the extremes right there. Here's Sherry down here, and we've got Sante over here. Just the crazy is off the hook. It's off the chain, as they say.
Money, but killing people so you don't get caught. There's
you don't get caught. Because that's the scheme, right? It wasn't really so much to get the money, it was to keep everybody quiet. The only person that they did kill for the actual money was Irene, because they needed to get rid of her so she couldn't pop back up and go, I didn't sign that. That's not my signature.
They should have just waited till she died, I guess.
But I mean, they could have hung out in an apartment for a little while, but from what I understand, Sante was in a hurry.
Right.
That's the scariest part about most scammers, right? If they've got a deadline and you're in the way, it's probably not good news for you.
That's bad. That's bad to hear. It's their deadline, not yours.
Exactly. Wow. But so this was a
you know what, Dez? I'm mad because I did not want to know about this lady. Now I know about Sante.
Now you know about her. Well, see, now anything we do now will be like really tame, and so
But right. This is very much the extreme. This is very much the extreme.
Now we're gonna like meet somewhere in the middle. So I was thinking we could do a case. It's not going to be stabby, but it's going to involve technology, and the church.
Yeah, right.
So we got somebody who we've got his name is escaping me right now. I was trying to do like a quick Google search, but it's off there.
Not Joe Wilson.
He claimed to be a tech what do you call it, a tech guru as a kid. Like he had built like an app, and then he got billions of dollars from the app, and then he came back up maybe 15 years later, and now he's a financial guru. So he's using, but he instead of like going to JP Morgan or Charles Schwab to use his skills there, he started a church connected financial scheme.
Interesting.
And so churches were teaching their members the
scheme. That is coming. It's coming back. It's coming back.
Yes, and he was getting that money from the proceeds. A lot of people lost their life savings playing with that guy.
Faith. I don't like that.
Playing with faith. Yeah.
Scammers make me mad.
They do. So I'm sorry, but you're going to be furious at this next story. So I'll send you links so we can cover this one in a couple of weeks. But
this was a good one, Dez.
Thank you for helping me cover this one.
Of course, this was always fun. I like it.
Do you have any place that you want people to find you?
But I always have so much to say about these damn scammers.
I know, right? These damn scammers. And you know what I say on Clubhouse? I say, okay, if it looks like a scam, if it smells like a scam, and it quacks like a scam, it's a scam. So y'all need to be careful. Be careful out there. Thank you for watching us on. But wait, there's more. Keep your eyes open. We'll have another episode for you soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Joy. Do you have a place where you want people to send you kind of messages or email or anything?
On Twitter, GeekNikJT. That's GeekNikJT. That's where I like to hang out. And then, of course, on Clubhouse, True Crime Talks Room. I'm always there. And I'll be back here. But wait, there's more.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm Dez. You can find me on Twitter under DizzyDezzy2010. And if you can find me as the Laundry Diva on Instagram, and of course Clubhouse. I'm always in the True Crime Talks Room, so just come out, join our house, join our club. There's always stuff going on there. So until next time, there'll be more. Thank you guys for coming. Don't forget to do all the YouTube-y things, like, subscribe, share, keep sharing until we come back. It won't be long. We'll have either.
What you think?
Yes, please. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to know what your thoughts are. If you've got ideas for more criminals we can cover, more scam artists we should know about, drop that in the comments below. If you've got ideas, what you think about this story or the story that we've covered, any other episodes we've covered, just drop in the comments and tell us what's on your mind. We'd love to hear from you. If you don't like us, we don't care. But anybody else,
we don't like you either.
We don't like you either. Anybody else, we want to hear from everybody. Honestly, we do.
Of course, yeah, we do.
So we look forward to it. We've got some other special episodes that we're going to be dropping soon. We've got a case of the cremation story. They are starting a documentary, so we're going to drop a special episode about that here soon. And Desiree is I'm going to do a story time for you. And if I can convince Joy, we're going to see if we can get Joy to share a story time too.
Yeah, we'll see if I can get stories.
But no promises. We're doing our best here, because I have a business. I actually have a couple of businesses. And Joy, are you in law school?
I'm not in law school. My girlfriend's in law school.
Your girlfriend's in law school. What are you studying?
I just work. I just work. I work at a law firm, but
You work at a law firm, okay? All right,
yeah,
and I just do laundry and real estate, and that's all I do.
exactly.
So we're just two regular people just hanging out, talking true crime because that is our favorite hobby. So come back, share your stories with us, and we look forward to sharing our stories with you. All right, thank you for coming. Thanks for dropping in. We'll see you guys later. Bye. All right, don't leave.